Hello, everybody. How are you? How is everything in your world? I've got my mask ready to go at all times in case I need to go into the store, like the Home Depot. I went to the Home Depot to get some gravel. That's how exciting my life is right now. Guys, it's good to be back in the studio. Been out on the road for so long. I kind of forgot what it was like, so forgive me if it's kind of choppy. But what I'm going to do in this video is pick up where we left off on our deep dive into Wichita, Kansas. As you know, if you're a regular here on the channel, this parody channel, we take a look at different communities every week. And things got delayed with some coronavirus complications. I'm fine. Everybody's fine. I'm just saying different alterations we had to make in our workload, workflow to accommodate different developments in terms of staying safe. And as a result, the Wichita, Kansas series got preempted after one video, the intro video. What happened to this guy, man? He lost his mind. So usually when I start a new community, so every week, like I mentioned, we try to take a different community, sometimes every 2 weeks. And we go into its history, its economy, its culture, its music, its people, and try to find interesting facts that I can exaggerate into some sort of humorous exaggeration. And that is kind of the basis of every video I do, almost. But in this case, Wichita got, like I say, there's a little gap there. I think it's been maybe more than a week since we started Wichita, so we're going to try to finish it up today and tomorrow by doing a series of videos, so get ready for that. Wow, that's way too much explanation, so let's just get right into it. So in this video, we're just going to look at the early history of the town, and then in other videos later, more modern history, and then, of course, into other areas, the economy, the arts, the music, everything about Wichita that we can exaggerate and just goof on. So this is a parody channel. Don't take any of this seriously. We're just goofing around out here, and certainly don't use this video as the source of your senior thesis. They're going to kick you right out of school. They'll say, where'd you get this information? I got it on the YouTuber. I got it on the internet. They'll be like, well, your last day is today. All right, and as usual, when we look at the early history of these communities, we've done about 10, 20 communities. I try to make sure we acknowledge the native tribes that were in the area. And in the case of Wichita, there was a group of Indian tribes called the Wichita. Well, that makes sense. Also known as the Quivira, Quivira. And then they had some problems with another native tribe called the Osage, the Osage. Somebody correct me on that pronunciation, in the mid-1750s. And so which is farther north of Wichita, and then that little rap battle got them moving south to avoid the Osage, and they went down to the Wichita area. Okay? And so then, as we know, right around then, the Europeans started to arrive and change the face of the area. And France was the first one to claim it. Now, that was interesting because France had this big chunk of the United States that the United States then bought from them, Louisiana and other areas, big chunk of the United States, in the Louisiana Purchase. Well, how much territory? You're talking about more than 800,000 square miles. So basically, parts of Louisiana, Arkansas, Missouri, Iowa, South Dakota, Nebraska, Kansas, Oklahoma, parts of Colorado, parts of Wyoming, and parts of Montana, and actually a little bit of Canada. So maybe we just ceded that to them for some Molson Golden Ale. I don't know. We'll have to find out. So then, of course, it was the Kansas Territory until it became the state of Kansas. And then after that, the Wichita, who had been kind of driven from their land by, just all the conflict of the Civil War, they skedaddled, and once it became a state and things were settling down after the war, they came back and they settled. We're talking to the Wichita people now. They settled on the Little Arkansas River. Okay. And then some traders started to set up trading posts, and which extended those trading trails, extended all the way down to Texas, became known as the Chisholm Trail, very famous trading trail. And then so that's basically it. They started to become a little town. We got a little thing going on here, guys. They started to survey the area. They started to build log cabins, a hotel, a community center. They had a YMCA. They had a discotheque. They put in a football stadium. They had baseball. They had dry cleaners. They had one of those paintball places where you could shoot paintballs at each other. They had everything. Okay? I mean, they even had a place where a coffee shop that had paintball guns in it. So as you're sipping your coffee, you could shoot paintballs at other people in the coffee shop. But now the problem is they're shooting back at you. So you're about ready to take a sip and kablam! You're covered with pink paint. So that was a unique setup that they had there, but it just shows you the innovation that was going on in the area. So now we're off and running. We're starting to develop a little town. In fact, the Mucky Mucks got together and they organized a company called the Wichita Town Company. Well, what are we going to call the company that we're making for this town called Wichita? Well, how about we call it the Wichita Town? The Wichita Town Company? Well, that's just brilliant. Then they formally incorporated in 1870. So they're cooking along. I mean, that's the interesting thing. Nobody was dilly-dallying. You look at these frontier people. They were not sitting around whittling sticks on the porch, okay? They were making things happen, let's be honest. Probably a lot of it just basic survival. And if you look at, for example, in Los Angeles, and later on, there's much later on, but some of the towns had to incorporate and become more serious concerns. Otherwise, they would be annexed by Los Angeles. So that's not necessarily the case here in the early days of Wichita, but it wasn't just the desire to keep moving forward. A lot of times that towns took action in terms of a corporation and that kind of thing. It was defensive maneuvers against their more predatory neighbors sometimes. So what are we doing? So Wichita, of course, was on that Chisholm Trail. There's a lot of trading going north and south along that trail, including cattle drives from Texas. So how did that work? So the cattle drives would come north from Texas, and then they put the cattle on railroads to the east. So that's where a lot of the cattle drive income came from, was selling it to eastern markets. And the cows loved it because, first of all, most cattle that were driven north on the cattle drives had never been on a train. A lot of them had never been on public transportation at all. So, it's the kind of thing that the cows loved it, and they got a free ride. See, that's the thing, is that train travel at that time was not exactly cheap. But here you had these cows, not only that enjoyed the ride from the Midwest all the way to the eastern seaboard, but they didn't have to pay for a ticket. The guy would come down the aisle and say, like, ticket, have your tickets ready. And these cows would just be like, woohoo, They're laughing because they know they don't have, excuse me, they know they don't have to give a ticket. They loved it. Now, things didn't work out so well once they got to the Eastern Seaboard and they, realized they were going to be dinner. But up to that point, they loved that train trip, guys. So now you've got, here's now Wichita, which is on the Chisholm Trail, which is not necessarily all cattle drives, but a lot of trading going north and south along the Chisholm Trail. Then they become a railhead for these cattle drives. So now you got some income. We're rolling. Wichita's taking off. We might be bigger than Chicago, right? And they had a little bit of a red light district across the Arkansas River in an area known as Delano. Okay, they had some brothels, they had some saloons, there weren't a lot of sheriffs around, so things are getting kind of wild. And in fact, a little too wild. And you may be familiar with Wyatt Earp. Wyatt Earp showed up to kind of take control, because that was his thing. He was the lawman's lawman, and he basically came in and laid down the law. All right, but the violence or things getting out of control wasn't so much controlled, or it diminished, but not so much from the efforts of the law, although that helped, of course. But the cattle railheads were moving west. So Wichita was losing its position in the cattle drive trade, because that moved west to Dodge City. So then Wichita says, well, let's just go ahead and annex Delano. And they did that in 1880. So now you've got huge immigration. And you had what? You had probably 10, 30, 50 people living in Wichita at the time. You had a mayor, you had the jailer, you had the shopkeeper, and then a couple families. Maybe 25, 30 people lived in Wichita for the first 50 years, maybe. But now you've got hundreds of people coming over the horizon from the east. So you don't know who they are. They could be Ohio State fans. They could be Jacksonville Jaguar fans. They might be Yankees fans. All of these Easterners, and let's call them Eastern Midwesterners, like Ohio, that kind of area, even like Kentucky, you could put into this whole category of Eastern. Now they're rolling into Kansas, and the regulars, just like any place that you have regulars that have been around a while, they look at the newcomers and they're going, oh, here comes some greenhorns, right? So you got the greenhorns coming in, and they didn't necessarily get along right away, because a lot of these newcomers, they tried to just hop around to their hip hop music and jump around and pretended that they were rap stars, and the old school people weren't having it. So you did have some battles, some rap battles right there on the streets of Wichita. But nonetheless, the city grew, right? And there was a land boom. Now, you think land's expensive now. Think about then, man, when it went from like $1 an acre to $20, $30 an acre, maybe $100, $200, maybe $300,000 an acre. Who knows? We don't really know. They didn't even really use American money in those days. Kansas had its own money called the Kansas doubloon. The Kansas doubloon is the money they use. So we don't know how many doubloons that it costs for a property, much less buying a house or even just a trailer. I mean, look, a lot of these people, they're like, hey, we don't even know if we're staying. We might go to Dodge City with the railheads, with the cattle drive railheads. We might go to San Francisco and, put a flower in our hair and, listen to Grateful Dead. We don't know what we're doing. So they just got a trailer, a regular mobile home, right? And even then, that was expensive. But anyway, by 1890, Wichita had grown, and that was now one of the top cities in the state. You had your Topeka's, you had your Kansas City, okay? But now you have Wichita coming up on third, coming around the bend, coming up fast. But what happened? What happened after this boom of this time period? Recession. And a lot of the people went bankrupt. And the old-timers told them, They said, look, if you're gonna do your rap battles in the middle of the street and take selfies all day and put mobile homes on your properties, and not even try to convert your Kentucky money to Kansas money, you're gonna go bankrupt. Well, what happened? They went bankrupt. So this younger crew coming in with their hats turned backwards, all right, their cowboy hats not only turned backwards, but some of them turned it sideways on their head like dorks. They wouldn't listen until they lost all their money, and that really is how it closed out the 19th century, right? Now things changed and they picked up, as we will pick up. See what I did there? The story of the 20th century in the next video. But that gives you the grounding on which the city rebounded and came back. And we'll get into that in the next video. Talk to you then.